Like attracts like. You have to understand, you are a magnet. Whatever you are, that's what you draw to you. If you're negative, you're going to draw negativity. You're positive, you draw positive. You're a kind person, more people are kind to you. So you're like a magnet, you know, and you got to understand something about like attracts like. If you see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. Ask, believe, receive. So many people overlook this very simple quality. You don't have to figure it out. That's what freezes people. When you're trying to figure out your life all the way to the end, when you can't figure it out, it freezes you from trying it. You don't have to know how. You have to ask, believe, and receive. That's as simple as it gets, folks. Faith says, believe, and I'll show you. If you show gratitude, it gets you to where you want to be quicker. It attracts joy, it releases negativity.
And I would wake up sometimes and my hands would be I would be dreaming, and you know how your dream seems so real, like you got money in your hand. And I would wake up and I'd slowly open my, it would be empty, but it would feel like I had nothing but money.
Peace and blessings to everybody. I had the amazing opportunity of interviewing NBA legend Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. He was the #3 overall draft pick by the Denver Nuggets. He played for LSU, #1 points per game as a freshman. And he was basically the Stephen Curry of the 90s. And his gift, his skill at an early age is he didn't allow his reality to determine his personality. His personality determined his personal reality. And he was able to manifest a career just through thought alone, by every day envisioning something that was greater than himself, to the point where his body was convinced that it was happening, even years before it happened. So I want you to pay very careful attention on how he did that, how he speaks about that. Because if you're going through disease, abuse, neglect, any type of trauma in your life, any type of situation, he shows us the gift, the secret, and how to overcome any situation that you're in. He didn't know his father. He was in the ghetto, and he was able to overcome so many adversities to achieve the success that he achieved. And his message is that we could do the same.
I never knew, but I knew that one thing. I wanted to give everything that I had to give myself the best chances of making it. And for me, there's so many factors that came into play. And I'll always go here first. I grew up in a religious family. I wasn't a Muslim, but I grew up in a family with my grandmother, my uncle, and my aunt in particular. They always taught me the value of a higher being and the importance of praying to that higher being, but more so praying for others more than you pray for yourself. And whatever you pray for, move in the direction of what you pray for. It reminds me of a saying by Frederick Douglass. He said, I prayed for freedom for 20 years and I never received an answer until I started praying with my legs. Because prayer alone ain't gonna get it. Right. And so you have to move in that direction. So that was the first thing. I always had a belief or understanding that, you know, if I'm going to make it, first and foremost, I have to have a sincere relationship with God. And of course, none of us are perfect, but constantly working on that relationship. So even as a young boy, I'm talking about elementary school, it was a habit, and even now at 51, it was a habit of mine as a normal practice. You know, in Islam, we call it dhikr, right? Mm-hmm. It was a habit just when I'm walking the streets, when I'm on buses, before I play, in the midst of playing, after I'm playing, I'm always, please God, forgive me, please bless me, please guide me, please this. And I'm always trying to keep God on my, you know, on my mind and on my tongue. That was one thing. Another thing, I'm always there with, we all have things that make us click, you know, that we think about that pushes us. And growing up in the ghetto, you don't see a lot of examples of people making it. So everything around you is telling you that your chance of making it is super slim. Mm-hmm. So because that's the message that you're receiving, you know, you have to find something that overcome those dominating thoughts and ideas. And for me, you know, the thing that would get me up in the morning is when I would think about my mother, you know, wanting to get her and my brothers out the ghetto. That was like, even when I was tired, you know, I mean, tears in my eyes. I'm like, man, I don't feel like doing this. I would think of my mother, man, having to go to work every day at that same job and living in the conditions that we're living in, and just want to make her proud, you know. So for me, that was something that woke me up, like literally religiously in the morning, and it pushed me. And again, these are things that are all bigger than myself. It was hardly ever, yes, I wanted to be individually successful. I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to have nice things. But when I look back, mostly everything that I wanted, it was for something beyond me. It was, I wanted my mother and my brothers out the ghetto. I wanted to be in a position to help people someday. Because I was that child at like 9, 10 years old. That's another thing. I would stay up at like midnight, and these images would constantly come on television, and they would show children, you know, in all type of compromised situations, you know, starving. And man, I would cry, man. I would cry so bad, and I would pray to God. I'm talking about snot in your nose type of crying, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, please, God, help me. Put me in a position to help, you know, because I knew what it felt like. I knew what it felt like not to have. I knew what it felt like, you know, to be looked at as not being capable, as inferior, as inadequate. And so those images would touch me. So that would wake me up some mornings. And then it was just the fear of failure, not wanting to fail, you know. And so I would think about what other children in other cities were doing, or possibly were doing. You know, maybe there's some that's taller than me and faster than me. And so that's why I devised a strategy at like 9, 10 years old. I said, I'm gonna start waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, right, and I'm gonna be at court at 5 o'clock. I doubt if anybody's doing that. And I started to block out, for me, because my vision, I started to reinforce positives. You know, you got a lot of people telling you, because your environment tells you, and you ain't gonna make it. So my thing is, I had to reinforce every time, you know, negative came. I'm thinking, I'm literally mental imagery. I would wake up. I mean, I would go to sleep, and I would have a practice. I didn't even know what the term mental imagery was until I read each book.
That's what's so amazing, is you already knew the science before they just figured out that if you think of something to where your body's convinced that's already there, then it's going to manifest. And there's no better solution than gratefulness. And you were talking about how you're always in dhikr. That's why I always try to get people, before you touch your phone, before you do anything, think of something greater than yourself. Right when you wake up, be thankful, be grateful 3 times, and don't move. Don't check your phone, don't check your WhatsApp, don't do anything. And you are doing that at such a young age. So can you discuss why that was so important, especially in those hard days? And can you describe one of those hard days?
Well, it was important because at the time, you don't know. You just know, I have to do something. And this makes sense. You know, it's like, as a child, I used to dream about having money, right, to be able to take care of my family. And I would wake up sometimes, and my hands would be I would be dreaming, and you know how your dreams seem so real, like you got money in your hands. And I would wake up, and I'd slowly open it would be empty, but it would feel like I had nothing but money. I'm like, oh, it would disappoint me. But when you begin to see, and it starts off small, when you begin to see benefits, you know, in what you're doing, it just motivates you to stick to stay the course.
Those are called small wins.
Right. And so waking up in the morning, I'm talking about, and literally I had decided, and it's only by the grace of mercy, but I decided at 9, 10 years old, I said, man, this is life or death for me. I gotta make it. If I don't make it, I don't know my life. So that was that fear, but that was also that desire just to be great at something, because society is telling you can't be great. And I hate for people to tell me that I can't do something. And so I decided, man, I'm going to wake up, and I don't care. It was dangerous. I wouldn't necessarily advise people to do that, but it could be, I mean, I'm not exaggerating, man. If you ever in Michigan, ever wake up one day and you see where the thunder and lightning is coming down so viciously, the rain is coming down so heavy, there's a chill in the air because it could be, you know, cold or whatever. At that moment, imagine me walking out my door like the sun is shining, focused. Like those things didn't matter to me because success meant more to me than those things. It could be cold, it could be hot. And so constantly I would think, I would even come home and I would close my blinds after I trained. And I would put the fan in the window if it was hot. And I would sit there and and it would be dark. And I would allow my mind to take me to, like, I would think about being in the NBA, exciting crowds, making millions, taking care of my mom and to the point where I could literally see it. Right. I mean, it was, so clear. And I wake up and that would motivate me because it's like every time I trained, every time I used mental imagery, it was like every time I did that, it felt like what I was striving for was achievable more and more each time I did it. And that made me want to do it even more. And that made me want to sacrifice, not going places, right? Not spending a lot of time with so-called friends, you know, and so those are some of the things for me at that age, the prayers, the waking up, because you have to have a strategy, the mental imagery, the consistency, the challenging yourself, the motivating factors, because it's not just one thing, because sometimes thinking about my mother and my brothers wasn't the strongest motivator. It was like, man, I want to help people, right? Sometimes it was as an opponent that I don't know that I may meet. And I remember my uncle, you know, back in the day in Christianity, they have something called prophesy. Right. And he used to preach, and he would tell me, it didn't end up being the actual profession, but he would tell me when I was young, he would say, you know what? I prophesied that you're going to be a famous musician, a singer, and you're going to earn millions, and you're going to be able to help a lot of people. And I would look at him, and, you know, and I trusted him, and they would keep telling me that I prophesied that this is what's going to, but it ended up being basketball. Right. You know, man. And
I want to break. So before you talk about specific things that you did manifest, I want people to understand the science of what you went through, which is incredible. Yeah. Like when I help people through cancer, envision of how it's going to feel when the cancer goes away to the point that your body's convinced of it. And those were genes the bad genes are deregulated, upregulated, good genes. And you talked about how you held that money to the point where your body was convinced that there was money in there, and you'd be disappointed when it's gone. See, most of us are waiting for something outside for us to feel love, joy, and abundant. What's amazing is you're doing the mental rehearsal where you're already feeling those emotions of abundance, joy, and love, and gratefulness, and helping and being helpful. And then they manifested. See, we've been duped within the matrix thinking there's some outside environment that needs to happen for us to feel a certain emotion. And it's the reverse. And that's the secret. You know, there's a big documentary, it's called The Secret. That's the secret. And then you do the hard work behind it, and then you'll see it work once. Like when I deal with addicts, or I deal with cancer, or marriages, or juveniles, you know, that are in the correction system, I just have them do this. And if they go through it one time and they see, oh my God, I'm in complete control of my destiny, and that's that limited free will that I have. Wow, that's amazing. That's so can you talk about, you know, you've talked to me about how you scored like 50 points at a third grader, where you scored all the points, or you actually envisioned yourself signing autographs or scoring 29 points at average per game. Can you talk about a few of those?
Yeah, I mean, all of what you just said. I mean, I would imagine myself, when I was in high school, I signed my first autograph when I was in the 9th grade. And I remember like having the visions that I would think about, like exciting crowds, signing autographs, standing ovations, all of those things. When I was in high school, almost every last thing I envisioned,
right,
and I worked toward, literally came true. From the points to, I mean, I'm in 7th grade playing again. I'm playing on a 10th grade AAU team, averaging 21.
wow,
As a 7th grader, and so things just kept skyrocketing. And a part of you got to be careful, because there's this negative side that keeps, it ain't gonna last for long. But it's good in a sense, because you want it to last for long. So it pushes you to train harder so that that day doesn't come.
yes,
In your mind. And so for me, I mean, in elementary school, I was 4th grade, and I remember we had a game. We lost like it was 46-43, and I almost beat the team by myself. I had 42 of the 43 points. There was a game we had, it was 36-42. We lost, but I had all 36.
wow,
And that's where people started talking, even more so, like, who is this little boy? And I remember, actually, I was listening, because some of this stuff you don't remember until somebody reminds you. There was this guy, he's a commentator, and he was talking about when I was going into the 9th grade. So I think I was in the 8th grade. I went to Mississippi State camp. And he's on television saying this right after the retirement ceremony. But this is how hard I trained, how hard I prayed. And he said, man, we were at camp, and at the end of camp, the coach would allow the seniors to come and play against the D1 the college, Mississippi State D1 team. He said this little Chris Jackson, right? he would tag along, right? He wanted to come, watch and whatever, and play. So eventually, he said, literally, he said he's about 115 pounds. He said they put him on the court. Before the camp was over, they said either going into the 9th or he was in the 9th grade. They said at that age, he was dominating D1 players.
wow,
Right. And so, but what got it to that, going back, I can't stress it enough.
it's the habits,
Man, but the mental side of it,
right,
to think about it, envision it, and believe that it can happen, because the believing that it can happen is what's going to wake you up in the morning.
right. And I want to explain that to people. Like, people say, I want to make the NBA, or I want to be a top entrepreneur, or I want to be a top at something. I said, okay, I'm close friends with an NBA player. I says, at 5 o'clock in the morning, he woke up, 4 o'clock, and if it was raining, he went out. I said, yeah, I'll do that. So then 4 o'clock in the morning comes around, alarm comes off. The mind says, wake up. But the body says, go back to sleep. And unless you can think greater than the way you feel, and the only way you can usually do that is you have something that's greater than yourself that you're willing to wake up for. And that's what people are missing, because we're such in a gratification society now. Everything's about us. What do people think about me? And we're not about the cause anymore. That I have to elevate myself through the cause.
Yeah.
And I put myself above it, where it's the reverse. And if people could say, okay, and they could wake up, even when those limiting thoughts come, saying go back to sleep. And if you could overcome that enough times, like you always say, it becomes easy. Yeah. Just like tying your shoe in the first few times, it's difficult, or riding a bike. And if you succumb and say it's hard, then you're going to put the bike down. You're never going to even learn. So that's what I want people to take as a lesson. So can you now go into your college career, where now people are bigger, people are faster. Now you're playing next to Shaquille O'Neal and the top SEC players, and how you be able to use that mental imagery there as well.
Yeah, I remember my one of my first days on campus, before they're assigning you dorm rooms and everything. Somewhere around that time, Kent Lowe, media guy, asked me, what do you want your career to say for itself? I said, man, if I can average about 12, 13 points, 7 assists a game for my career, I think that'll be decent. Because my mind was, I'm looking at my size. And even though I played against different size people, but now in college, usually it's the the people that are on your team and that you're playing against are usually the guys that were on their they were the number one guys on their high school teams. So the talent is better. But at the same time, my vision was bigger, but you can't always tell people because they may try to talk you out of it. And man, I could, my first game was about 12-13 and 7 assists. My second game was 21. And I was like a little superstitious at the time. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to disturb the moment. But I noticed something. I said, man, that felt easy.
Yes.
Literally. And so coach stopped me. He asked me about, we need you to score. I said, I'll try. My third game, I had 48. Wow. Fourth game, I think 36. Fifth game against Florida, national televised game. They were number one in the SEC. I ended up scoring 53. And then from there, it just kept going. But the one thing I remember as I look back, and when I train guys now in the NBA and college, all the stuff that I was doing from elementary all the way, things that you learn more and more as you go. But the moves that I was doing in elementary, I was doing the same moves in junior high, the same moves in high school. Yes. And I was constantly pushing myself harder, trying to get quicker, more explosive, more balanced, more consistent. And I'm thinking I'm going to have to change my game. But I'm in college. I'm executing the same stuff. And so I tell them it's about doing something the right way and doing it consistently, right, over and over again, trying to get better at it each time. Right. And it just so happened that my career just ended up, being elevated during that time.
And I want people to take a lesson that if you're going to do the work every day, one of the things that you also have to overcome are those low desires while you're doing the work. Because with fame, even as a teenager, what comes as a distraction? Women, drugs, alcohol. Yeah. If you have a reality in your future that's greater than your current environment, you'll be willing to sacrifice the drugs, the alcohol, the friends, the negative environments. But if you don't have something greater to live for, then why are you going to tell your friends no on a Friday night if you have nothing greater to live for? But if our low desires take over, we come up with reasoning, we rationalize. Just like many NBA players, they say 70% of them go broke. Many of them cheat on their spouses. So many of them, they go astray is because the body takes over the mind, because they reach the pinnacle and they have nothing else to live for. They say, this is the NBA. That's why many of them who retire become depressed. But you kept it going. And can you talk a little bit about that pressure and how actually you weren't preparing for the NBA? You were, all these days, you were preparing for something bigger. And can you also go back a little bit? Because one of the things that you wanted to manifest was buying your mom a brand new house. So before we go to the point about the flag, can you talk about that day? How you envisioned buying your mom a brand new house? Because I think that's so important. Because one of the things I could always tell people is, well, isn't it willing to sacrifice the Xbox controller, those 2-3 hours a day, just for one chance that you buy your mom a brand new house? You say, yeah, that's something great to live for. I said, okay, maybe now it's easier to tell your bad friends no, or tell those bad things no. So can you relive that moment for us and share that moment for us?
Well, I mean, that was one of the things that I would think about constantly, is definitely getting my mother a house and how I wanted the house to look and everything. And I remember when I decided to leave LSU to put my name in the draft. And I knew roughly that I was going to be top 5. Didn't know exactly where. And I'd hired an agent at the time in Mississippi. And I remember telling him that this is what I wanted to do, but I didn't want her to know anything. And I remember taking my mother on a drive, giving her the impression that I'm looking for myself. And so I'm like, what do you think about this? It's okay. What do you think about this? I don't really like it. What do you think? Oh, no, I like that one. I said, really? I said, I don't really like that one. I said, but yeah. And, I said, man, I wish I could get it. Because my mother still didn't have I don't think she had a concept of how much money that I was going to be making. And so I ended up immediately, when I dropped her off, I ended up calling the agent. I said, listen, I need to do whatever I got to do to get that house. And I called my brother and I said, I need you to be over. I need to hire an interior decorator. And I don't want her to know anything, nothing. I said, and so I need you to send me images. I need to okay them. So it was a process. And so while I was playing at Denver, my brother would send me little images of how the room would look, the furniture. I would okay it, some I wouldn't. And so I ended up closing on the house. I remember we had a game in San Antonio. And I asked the team, look, I need to have permission to go. I want to present my mother a house. And they gave me permission. So after the game, I flew to Mississippi and I told my brother, do not let her know that I'm coming. I said, instead, tell my mother that she has to accept an award on my behalf, but it's being held at someone's house. But the house is her house. She didn't know it. And we had it catered. We had people there. The media was there. And when I walked in, you know, I'm greeting everybody, and man, the house was just beautiful. Everything was there because I told them I want everything there. I want her just to be able to take her clothes, wow, and her essentials, and move in. And so it was like everything, the linens, the towels with a monogram on it, dishes, food in the refrigerator, everything. And so I remember I was so nervous. I mean, I'm like shaking. You would think I would be calm and cool, right? And I flew in, and my brother, I'm calling him. He's like, look, man, this mama's keep messing with her gold chain. I said, will you tell her to come on? I got to go, right? So she finally got out the house, and I can remember her driving up, and I bought like 2 dozen roses, and I was behind the door. And when she knocked on the door, I'm like, you know, I'm like, literally, I'm nervous. Mm. And I remember turning around, and she opened the door, and I said, welcome home. And as I was saying, welcome home, she started screaming and yelling. And then I grabbed her, I brought her in, and then I'm taking her throughout the house, the formal dining room, the kitchen. This is your room. This is, you know, whoever you want to live in. This is your house. This is not mine. You set the rules. If you don't want me here, I'm not here. Right. I said, this is yours. And it didn't resonate with her, you know, and I love you. I wanted to present this to you. You know, I told all of those good things. And she was telling me, she said, well, I got to go back home and clean up. I said, Mom, this is your house. Well, I got to go back.
You couldn't believe it.
This is your house. Whatever you got over there, give to your brothers and sisters. Just go get your clothes and bring them over here. This is yours. And it didn't really resonate, but that was the moment for me. That was the moment when I finally, because I always contemplate death too. I'm always thinking about death, not in a morbid type way. Because I think thinking about death helps bring you closer to Allah. Right. And even as a youngster, I constantly thought about, man, I could die any day. What is my life going to say for itself? But that day, after I did that, I'm literally on the plane. And at that moment, it was the most peaceful. Like, I literally said to myself, oh God, if you take my life now, I did what I said. And I literally, at that time, if I would have died, right, that was it. Yep.
All the success I believe that we've achieved, the facilities, the youth programs, the camps, it's all because of that drive, especially for the mom. I remember when I was the youth and I was arrogant to my mom one day, and that was a huge wake-up call to me, because I had a vision that what if my mom passed away at this moment and I don't get a chance to redeem? And I said, for the rest of my life, I'm going to take that as an opportunity to always be there. And that's why I believe we've been blessed with so much. So as a lesson to everybody that's listening in to this, I want you to take the lesson that wouldn't it be worth just stopping the drugs or putting the video game down or stop talking back to your mom or getting rid of those negative friends or fixing a relationship that forgive somebody so you could use that energy that one day you could buy your mom a brand new house or start an orphanage or do something greater than yourself. Because if I were to ask you, Brother Mahmud, every day you woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're in the rain, it was hot, your hand was frozen, wasn't it worth just for that one moment? And you would say absolutely, yeah. Correct?
You say, was it what now?
That all those sacrifices that you made of staying away from toxic friends, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, watching your mom go leave for work in the morning, and you following her, wasn't all those days, nights, so on, all that hard work worth that one moment where you could buy your mom a brand new house?
No question. No question. But the beauty of it is, when you get to that point, I truly believe this, that sometimes we shortchange ourselves. That when we get to that point and that happens, we're in Allah puts us in a position that we're able to do more.
Yes.
And so a part of my, and a part of my mind was also at that age, I grew up without a father. You know, so I trained also because a part of me was like, man, I want to work out so hard. I want to be so great that maybe there's a possibility that the man that's my father will find out about me and he'll want to know me.
Wow.
But then I would think about too, man, I grew up without a father. I want to have a family someday. I want to have children. I want to have a wife. I want to be able to raise a family, you know, and so that was my motivator. And so not only did Allah allow me to do that, but he allowed me to do other things and then travel and meet. So it's usually Allah blesses you with what your vision is shorter than what Allah gives you to do, you know, because you put in the work by the grace of mercy of Allah, you put in the work, you were disciplined, you were consistent, you know, you try to stay away. And, okay, we're not perfect, but you constantly are trying to stay away from those negative things and those bad things. And I'm telling you, man, it's so gratifying. And it humbles you. That's another thing. It humbles you because when you have to put yourself through that type of abuse and you know what it takes to get there, man, that type of thing, because you're talking about near-death experiences, pain, injuries, you know, bad days. I mean, and you know that at any moment, Allah, you can take this away. I can have so many bad days, you know, I can lose confidence, you know, or I can get injured. All of this work ends up being nothing in terms of basketball. Because you said something earlier, and I think, because you mentioned something about from basketball to the stand that I took. And I really believe that all of those things you learn in sports, in my case, the discipline, the networking, the getting up on time, the consistency, the sacrifice. Listen, once you give up on yourself, they're carryover. You give up on your family, you give up on your dreams, you give up on your morality, you give up. He says, no, right? So, you know, for me, going through those things, it was just a logical conclusion that if you put yourself through this abuse in basketball, even if you look at the symbolism, if you look at basketball, it's about conquering an opponent. It's about strategizing to overcome an opponent. It's about putting yourself through abuse, right? And developing the skills for the world to see, right? So that you could be successful in the game, but also win. So if you got an opponent, like if the government you look at as being an opponent, if you got systemic racism as looking at it being an opponent, it's not going to end with basketball. This competitive nature that you've developed in yourself to put your body through abuse so that you can be successful, that you can not only be successful for yourself, but more so for people around. It's more so about, is that like this saying goes, the goal in life is to find your gift. The purpose in life is to give it away.
Yes.
So if this is your goal in basketball, then why would it stop there? So when you begin to learn and say, hold on, man, I don't like this. I don't, just like you don't like an opponent conquering you and defeating you, I don't like this.
Right.
I don't like the way this feels. You know, and so it just, for me, when I look at it, it's a natural transition. Because even as a child, too, I used to pick up books because I didn't think I was very smart. Not that I wasn't or couldn't, but that's the message that I received. So I automatically looked at myself as inferior and inadequate. But I remember I used to pick up books on occasion, like going to the dentist's office. They would have National Geographic and certain things sitting at the table. But my mother, she didn't have books in the house, but occasionally you would see one or two. And I remember this book, man, it was about this thick. And it had a blue cover. It was hardcover. And I don't know who left it. I don't know if it was left there before we got in the house, but I picked it up and they had words in there that I didn't know what they meant, but I could read well. And I would read it and I would find myself reading it, pretending that I was smart, pretending that I was educated. So even at that age, it was something in me that wanted to be, but I didn't grow up in a house where I got that training. I got that discipline, you know, and it wasn't something that I saw a future for myself because of my environment. I saw more of a future because we're told, especially as African-American boys, you have a better chance of becoming an athlete, right, or an entertainer and actor. And so for me, all of that was a transition. And I think basketball, the things that I had to go through, waking up early, you know, putting myself through abuse, sacrificing, you know, strategizing, you know, all of those things, it was just a normal transition that led me to making that decision.
And the lesson I want everybody to take is figure out what you're a 5, 6, 7 at, and try to become an 8, 9, 10 by reading, experiencing, traveling, talking to people. But more importantly, use the word humbleness. You know, write down what you want. Write it down. And envision it, close your eyes. But then ask yourself, somebody says, what is humbleness? Humbleness is when you submit to truth. You know, and then you have a vision that's greater than yourself. Go to a loved one and ask them a simple question. What do I have to do to get here? What do you think I have to improve about myself? How do you know you're humble? Is if you submit to that. Or just ask yourself questions. Who are the limiting people I need to remove? What are the bad habits that that I have to get rid of? And if you're humble, you'll submit to that. That's one thing. And then the other thing that you talked about is quitting. You know, sometimes we run a school. What happened? Oh, the teacher is no good. And then they quit, let's say. Then they go to college. Oh, it's the teacher. It's too hard. Doesn't know how to teach. And then they start a career. Within 3 months, they're already looking for another job. And then they get married. Oh, my husband's the problem. My kids are the problem. Their whole life, they're looking for some outside reason why they keep failing. And the same things keep happening as them being the same person, expecting a different result. We call that insanity. What you did is you said, no, there's things about me that I need to improve on. The environment isn't the problem, it's me. And if I want a different reality, I need to change. It's not the teacher's fault that it's not the fact that I've never, because you could use excuses, right, bro? Hajj Mahmoud? I don't have my father. Everybody's telling me I should be a loser. Everybody's telling me I'll probably end up in prison. And you could have succumbed to that environment. But you took the stance, which is a miracle of God, saying, no, I am in complete control of my destiny. So if anybody's listening, you're in an abusive relationship, you have an illness, take your free will back. Think greater than the way you feel, and don't allow anybody within your environment to tell you anything less, especially yourself. Just like Hajj Mahmoud did it, you could do the same. So I think really that's so important. That's the secret, honestly, Hajj Mahmoud. And that's why I know the first time me and you met, because I've met other athletes and I've met other people within the camps and so on. They would come in and you'd always sometimes see an arrogant attitude. And I remember we were playing basketball. I don't know if you remember this. This was, I think, in 2012. And everybody came. You're practicing with them. We're playing some 2-on-2. And there was this one little boy that was waiting there with the basketball for like 2 hours to get one-on-one with you. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were exhausted, all night. I went and took a shower. I came back. This is the end of the day. And you were still practicing with this boy. I'll never forget that. And I said, man, I need to get close to this brother. And we've been close ever since.
I'm always telling myself, you know, there was a saying when I was coming up. They say for every weakness, God gives you a strength, right? And I always grew up with the mindset that as quick as God gives you something, he can take it away, right? And so that in and of itself doesn't allow me to become arrogant and to carry myself in that way, because I know that at any moment, if Allah wants to test me and try me, right, he can put me to a test that, you know, I know he said he doesn't give you a burden you can't bear, but he can make my life very, very difficult and challenging, right? And so those things always, for the most part, kept me pretty much balanced. and being humble, and I say this to people a lot, not just in basketball. I said, you know, stay humble and hungry. You know, it's like I carry with me, no matter what I would do, if I would, let's use basketball, for example, if I scored a lot of points, had a great game, I would always send messages to myself. I would be grateful, thank Allah for it. But I'm always telling myself, never be satisfied. Be grateful, because there's always room for improvement. So that kept me hungry. It kept me humble, but it also kept me hungry with that balance. So it was a bit of both. And also I think when you're humble, you start seeing the benefits of being humble, right? You start seeing that really Allah blesses you more than if you were arrogant. And life, as far as my experience has been, it becomes easier. And you find that people gravitate to you more, right? So even your relationships, because who wants to be around somebody that's arrogant, always talking about themselves, not willing to support others, right? And so that's just something that I was fortunate at a young age to develop. But one of the things that got me there was this older guy that, and I can't remember his name. If I could, man, I would try to go to him and thank him with everything that's in me. But I had a little arrogance when I was like in 4th grade, because I was playing against older guys. I was talented. And you get on the court and you start talking trash. And I'm literally defeating and beating older guys. I'm in elementary playing against high schoolers. Well, one particular day, the high school guy, or maybe he was out of high school. I'm on my way home, man. He's cursing me out. Like, you little. And I ain't never heard anybody talk to me like that before. And I was angry. But he hurt me. But I didn't want him to know he hurt me. So I was like, man, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. But right literally when he walked off to me, because I knew this wasn't really who I was, but I was caught up in the environment, the lifestyle. Man, I made a commitment right then and there. I said, from this day forward, I'm never going to carry myself in an arrogant way. I'm going to let my actions speak for me. And that moment, literally that moment, was the pivotal moment for me. Just how he spoke to my soul and checked me, changed. And after I did that, I began to let my actions speak, be soft-spoken, you know, thank you, boom, boom. Man, Allah just began to open doors like crazy. He getting invited to this camp, to this tournament. The doors just began to open. So that's why I'm constantly mentioning and speaking about being humble.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First, Brother Hussein, thank you for allowing me to join this. I'm super excited. Hajj Mahmoud, pleasure to finally get to meet you. I'm a big fan, actually. So my question is kind of lengthy, and forgive me for it being kind of long, but for you to understand my question, I want to give you a short background of my history, and it'll make more sense to why I would be asking you that question. Currently, I'm a physical education teacher, head varsity basketball coach, and a head varsity football coach at a school. And I've gotten to that point not planning to do that in my life, because growing up throughout my entire middle school and high school career, I always told myself I wanted to go D1. D1 in basketball or D1 in football. I played both sports. But I didn't have the mindset like you did growing up, and I never really had the mentorship or guidance to work as hard as you did to get there. So when I graduated high school, alhamdulillah, I got a coaching opportunity, but I didn't know what I really wanted to do with my life and career. So when I coached for about a few years, and then luckily I landed a teaching job. But even then, being a basketball coach, being a football coach, and being a teacher, I feel like it's not enough after experiencing so much experiences with the youth, where I don't feel like I have enough of an impact just as a coach or just as a teacher. So I expanded a little further out, and I created a nonprofit organization called ROC, which stands for Reaching Our Children. ROC, we empower the youth through sports education prevention programs, but from a holistic standpoint, we want to help people reach their dreams and goals. So my question to you, brother, is how do we help people create that mindset like you did growing up from, you know, a very young age to get to their goals and dreams? What advice do you have for me being a mentor and trying to create these programs for the youth, whether it's through entrepreneurship, whether it's through sports, education, prevention programs? What could you tell me that I could carry on for the rest of my life throughout my organization? Because that's what I want to do forever. I don't want to be, or I don't want anyone to be stuck not knowing what they wanted to do with their life, just as if I was stuck years ago not knowing what I wanted to do. So what advice could you give me that I could carry on to give others for them to reach their dreams?
Oh wow, that's tough. The first thing that comes to my mind, alhamdulillah, thanks for the question, and thanks for giving me a little background before asking a question. Of course, the first thing is to, and these are just the things that come to my mind right now, is to identify, you know, because sometimes people say they want something, you know, but it's not really what they want. And it's to truly identify that it's what they want, you know, and the questions like, why is it that you want this? How often do you think about it? Right? You know, because if you had asked me at that age, even at 9 and 10, and see, sometimes too, people, they think they want something, but they end up finding out that, okay, in my case, basketball, I flirted with basketball, football, baseball, track, but eventually I gravitated to basketball. It was just something that it was easy for me to wake up to. I loved it. But at the time, I wanted to be in the NFL too. I wanted to be like Carl Lewis, right? I wanted to be like Muhammad Ali. I was all over the place. But eventually, my life led me to, man, no, this is it. This is what I want. And I think an important thing is to, because sometimes there's multiple things that they like, and to constantly put them in those positions to experience them, for one. And then as they're experiencing them, I think the stories that we tell them. I did have, even though I had negative people around me or in my environment, I also had positive people. People like Pop, Boo Cooper, Spencer. Pop was an older guy, like an adult. He called me Doc. And he would always sit with me, hey, Doc. And he would always tell me, man, you know, you're going to make it. And Bob, so I had those positive reinforcements. And so I think a part of it is putting them in those environments to explore and to experiment. And then when they finally identify that this is what I want, and this is tough because it's just not black and white. Everybody's receptive to a different approach. It's like when I train people, some people I can train real hard. Some people I have to give it to them piece by piece, because if I give it to them too hard, it'll kill their drive. Like, right, man, it's too hard. And so it's really paying attention to what makes this person click, right? What makes them tick, because not everyone's receptive to the same approach. So identifying, giving them the experience, then explaining to them, not just explaining from your knowledge what it takes, like to be successful in anything. It's like I talk to my children, I say, you know, if you talk to anybody who's successful, there's a recipe, just like there's a recipe for failure. I said, you're never going to hear them say, I was lazy, I didn't sacrifice, I didn't work hard, I wasn't consistent. But if you talk to people that are successful, they're going to tell you, I was consistent, I sacrificed, I paid attention to detail, I was disciplined, I was responsible. So these are the things that in order to get to that point, you have to do on a consistent basis if you're trying to succeed. But also associating yourself. They've done studies, and I know Wise talks about it a lot, that if you're trying to lose weight, hang around people that work out. If you're not smart, if you want to get smarter, hang around smart people. Because there's a lifestyle, there's a conversation that comes with that daily, that's constantly reinforced, and you're going to learn, you're going to pick things up along the way. So if you want to be moral, if you want to be an activist, if you want to be an athlete, hang around athletes, right? Because there's a lifestyle associated with that. So those are some of the things that, and then speak to them about, there's a book called Chop Wood, Carry Water, Falling in Love with the Process of Becoming Great, right? And it talks about how there's a process and we have to learn how to be patient. We're growing up in a society right now where it's fast information, fast food. We want fast results. And we don't want necessarily, we don't fully understand, I say we, for those of us who don't, the importance of being patient, right? Things take time to do. And so just roughly, those are some of the things that I think about and that I try to implement when I'm talking to people, trying to convey to them. But telling them the stories, constantly motivating them and giving them that belief that I believe in you, right? And it's a balance of also not just, because some people, they're quick when they push people too hard and they're always focusing on what they don't do well, but you got to also tell them what they do well. It's a balance, right? Like, man, that's a great job, right? It motivates. So there's a lot that goes into it. But those are some of the tools that I use even when I train people, you know, like now, training some NBA guys here in New York. And some of these same, you would think, well, they're older, but these same strategies work. And but those are the things those are some of the examples that I use that tend to work often. And just constantly reminding them, man, just constantly. I mean, I had cousins that would constantly psych me up. My goodness. And like starting lineups, I do that to my children at a young age in the house when they were young, starting for the Denver Nuggets. I lead, and you're presenting this image, right? This world, making them believe it, right? We got to tell these stories. We got to instill in them that you can do this. You know, this is just not a fantasy or a dream. No, this can be real life, right? You can make it, but it's going to take this. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. And you're going to have those ebbs and flows. Days when, oh my goodness, it seems like it's just too hard. But then when you start playing, and I'm using basketball as an example, it could be anything. When you start getting out there and playing, it's like, wow, I executed that move. Wow, that was easy. And so it's going to be that, and then you're going to find out that the more you do it, it gets easier and easier along the way. You just got to get through those stages, those early stages. And yeah, man, those are some of the things that I do. I hope I answered your question.
And to recap that, you know, if you hang out with 9 broke people, you're the 10th. And another principle that you should live by, there's 3 types of patience. Patience of sacrifice or patience of struggle, of where you're going through hardship. Then you'll be pleased with the outcome if you're able to be patient. Patient through sin, where you're able to avoid bad things. Then your faith will increase, belief. And then patient of doing the right thing. Then the truth will be unraveled to you. That's why it's so important. You cannot have faith without patience. Patience to faith is like the head to the body. And if you take the head out of the body, you're dead. The same with patience. And one thing that Brother Mahmud is patient. And he was also talking about, you know, being an athlete. You were talking about being an athlete. So he was here a couple of weeks ago. We go and play basketball. Okay, of course, you know what happened there. We go and say, okay, I'm going to get him in tennis. Beats me in tennis. Like, you know, I'm going to go take him golfing to the golf range. I definitely could hit a golf ball. So I'm looking at people, they're hitting it, you know, 220 yards, 230. So we're hitting it. And he hits it almost 300 yards to the fence. I was like, man, I give up. We're not playing sports, competing in sports anymore. So, yes, there is a nature within us. But you really have to figure out what you're good at, Hussein, and say, what am I willing to wake up every day and put in the work in for? And that's the key. I mean, IKEA, the owner of IKEA, at 7 years old, would go and sell matchsticks. This is in the book, Chop Wood, Carry Water. He would sell matchsticks at the age of 7. His friends would tell him, what are you doing? You're 7, let's go to the park. He would ride his bike for 3 hours, buy matchsticks, sell them. And now that person who did it, his company is worth $150 billion. That's the owner of IKEA. but it started at the age of 7. It's so ordered. That's the way you rewire your subconscious, and you tell your mind where you're synergized with the body that this is going to happen. And you have to do this. That's what
That's right.
Brother Mahmud have. That's what you should have.
I had a question. So I was reading, I read a while back about how the last few years in the NBA, your faith kind of put you in a position similar to what Colin Kaepernick was in his last few years in the NFL. And I really wanted to know, how did you feel was it an easy decision for you to stick with your faith and give up the dream that you worked so hard for? Or was it like more gut-wrenching? Whereas, like, because I think about it now, some people don't want to give up a job because it's high income, but there's a shka that some of their income is haram, you know, for maybe they're selling haram meat or something at a restaurant, and they don't want to give that up. But I really want to know how somebody like you, this was your life dream that you worked so hard for, and how hard was it for you to make that decision?
Well, and going just real quick, I can understand too those people who have those thoughts, because those are real thoughts. No one wants to not be able to take care of their family, and something that you've worked so hard for most of your life, just because you stand up for something that you believe to be principled, it could be taken away from you. So I really understand it. For me, I'd gotten to that point, man. You know, I began to analyze my life a little bit. I became a Muslim, obviously. And I began to really analyze my life. I began to read more. And I began to do some soul searching. And I began to ask myself some hard questions, like, what do you want your life to say for itself? You know, how do you want to be known? How do you want to be defined? Do you want to just be known as a great basketball player who had a mean crossover and a quick jump shot? Or do you want to be known for somebody that really stood for something, that had values? And then reading stories about Malcolm and all of those people, you know, the prophets, the imams, and just the enormous amount of people that have came through that did something, or that was a part of something that was bigger than themselves. Those are the things really that motivated me, right? And when you read those stories, they touch me more than, you know, any other stories. And so I remember reading this thing by George Washington Carver. He says, no one has the right to come into this world, then go out of it without leaving behind distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it. And it's like, what legacy you want to leave, you know? And so I had gotten to the point through all of my reading and my prayers. I said, I want to live and die with a free conscience and a free soul, whether people like it or not. And it got to the point for me where the truth, and still now, the truth means more to me than anything. When you get to that point and you know that Allah's al-Razaq, and you really believe it, like that bird that takes off from its nest knowing that it's going to come back with sustenance, it's those choices become easy because you're not the one that provides for me, Allah is, right? So I'm just going to surrender. I don't have to know all the information. I don't have to be perfect. But if I know that, okay, this, I don't believe in this, I don't think this is right, I'm going to take that position, and it's going to be what it's going to be. So when I made the decision for me, that wasn't even a factor. Like, it didn't even matter to me, because the truth was more important to me than those things. And I even had issues with, you know, now I'm not married, but when I was married, you know, and I had to apologize, you know, to my wife at the time. And then I had children. I said, listen, because people would call and they want to do interviews, HBO, you know, and she'd be like, oh my goodness. She said, what are you going to tell them? She had the look on her face. I said, what I believe to be the truth. She said, but when you tell the truth, they burn our house. We don't get jobs, right? And I told her, I said, you know what? I said, I apologize in advance. I said, you know, this is the man that I'm aiming to become. I want to live this way. I want to die this way. I said, so, you know, I apologize for any harm that may come your way, the children's way. I said, but I made a commitment. and I don't plan on, you know, moving away from that commitment. And, you know, just this is the road that this is the man that I'm trying to become, and that I want to live and die that way. And so I had to apologize because I know it was tough, you know, because she had gotten into a life that was comfortable. Now it was getting ready to be altered drastically, you know, when you make decisions like that. But I had made up my mind, and I said, I love y'all. I said, but I love a lot more, you know. And so, you know, I'm not perfect, but if it's something that I believe in, I got to stand up for it. And, you know, it's going to be what it's going to be. So I want to apologize to you for any harm that may come your way or anything that may happen. It's not my intention, but this is the road that I've decided to take, the man that you married. Yeah. So but I've made up my mind. I mean, really, I was totally comfortable with that. Yeah.
Oh, that's powerful. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Mashallah. You know, man, I got the call about somewhere around 4 o'clock in the morning, sister in the community. And she said, "Salaam alaikum, turn on the news. Your house is burning down." And I flicked it on, I looked at my wife at the time. And I wasn't angry. I wasn't scared. I wasn't paranoid. I was actually very peaceful. That I can remember, like, being very peaceful that day. Like, you know, like, astaghfirullah, mashallah, you know. And I remember getting my clothes, putting my clothes on, because it was about maybe close to an hour away, you know, where we were staying. And I drove down there. When I got down there, the media was down there. And I walked up, and of course they started asking me questions. But prior to that, we had already had a couple of incidents. There was when it was being framed up, the tires, it was like thick tire marks, so possibly a truck or something that ran into and tore down the garage frame. And then some time after that, maybe a couple of weeks or so, give or take, we came, and when they put the white, like, felt before they start doing the mortar and the brick, they had Ku Klux Klan insignia drawn on the building. And then some time after that is when the sister finally called me. So we had already had, like, it wasn't like, hold on, man. There was no signs. There were signs of it. So it wasn't like it was a huge surprise, right? Because, you know, the area that we were in was a risk for me getting there, but it was one of those situations where the property was so good, and we were thinking about building a community and setting up land for people to buy, because they had a lake. It was like 53 acres. I mean, it was beautiful land right on the main strip. And so I'm thinking, my mind is thinking community, right? You know, it's a little dry, but man, we can have everything here established, no problem. So I was really peaceful that day. I was really peaceful. Yeah, really peaceful. But of course, disappointed, sad in a sense but I was peaceful. I wasn't angry. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't scared. Yeah. You know, terrified. Mashallah.
How did you talk to Allah that night? That night, the next few days, because you said something really important. You said even before you became Muslim, you always had this presence of Allah, that He was ever existing, He was ever present. How did you, you know, did that enhance communication? How did you, you know, get into dialogue with the divine at that moment of time thereafter?
I mean, you know, pretty much the same. You know, I try to be consistent as much as possible, man. Just thanking Allah for every breath that He's given me, asking Allah to increase me in wisdom and guidance and consciousness, and fearing Him the way He should be feared. To protect myself, my family, the ummah, to protect us from debt and the oppression of men. You know what I mean? To give us the strength to bear whatever may come our way. You know, bless us to be sincere, you know what I mean? Not to succumb to these types of hardships and challenges to where we lose our faith. Let me stay steady, you know, all of just the same. You know, I try to always be consistent with asking, And, you know, not just asking, but, oh Allah, please bless me to be, you know, that person that, you know, please don't take my life, you know, where my kufr outweighs my iman. Please, if there's anything I ask you, I don't care about riches. Please don't let me die with you being disappointed with me. You know, and for me, this is like number one.
You know, Malcolm X talked about how he replaced thankfulness and patience for thankfulness. And right after his house was burned down, he gave a sermon. He said, nothing is going to stop me from spreading the truth. But I think to get to that level, you first have to be truthful with the little things that are important to you.
So your energy and your emotional intensity and your vision, I think it had a lot to do with your success. Plus, like you said, you know, you were doing different activities. It seems like you surrounded yourself with different people. And I can resonate a lot with that because I personally have been following a very different path than a lot of the people around me for a few years now. And it just makes me feel good knowing that I'm going down the right path. It's different. It's not always embraced by the other people around you. You know, when you talk about getting up super early and following specific tasks, and like you said, chop wood and carry water, which, you know, people don't understand that sometimes the most simple, mundane tasks done over and over and over again, person vision of something greater. It works, you know. So thank you for being an inspiration to me right now. I had a couple different questions that would go in different directions. So I'll tell you both of them and then you kind of just answer which one you decide. So one was about, you know, what mentors did you come across along the path that inspired you and what was the biggest lessons you got? Or what great difficulty did you face that you got through that either, you know, helped you achieve greater success or changed you in some way? By the way, your humility is amazing.
Thank you.
I call humility a superpower, by the way. So it is, because it gives you the opportunity to learn way more and to be accepted by people who, you know, have way more available information to them. So it's like, I've been finding lately that being humble has been a huge help to me in my own personal journey. So it's a beautiful thing. I can see it all over you, brother. So for sure. So either one, talk about your mentors or a great difficulty that maybe you were able to overcome.
Yeah, I had a lot of mentors. I mean, just my mother alone, you know, getting up every morning, being consistent, doing the best she could. People like Pop, like I mentioned some of them before, coaches that I had in their own way, Coach Jenkins, a guy named Prince Jones. They all contributed in their own way. Pop was real major. He was an older guy. He used to always just sit me down and just talk to me about life. And those things I value more because it's just like when I was going to LSU, the reason I chose LSU was because the assistant coach, out of maybe 1,000 hours of conversations, 90-some% of those conversations had nothing to do with basketball. Yeah. Just about, you know, life and who you are and getting to know you. And that meant a lot to me. But Dr. J, actually, Julius Erving, he was the guy for me that motivated me in terms of basketball, the one that I would look to. I loved his style of play, but also I loved the fact that he was humble. And I was always attracted to people who could play very well, but also didn't carry themselves with arrogance. And that was just attractive to me as a young boy. So I literally began to fashion my life, constantly looking for stuff on him to read and everything and try to follow that course. The other one, what was it? What was the other one?
Difficulty?
Oh, my. You know, and I still deal with it. The thing that was a headache, has been a headache, but I've received so much benefits from it, just growing up with Tourette syndrome, the neurological disorder. Because it's like your mind and your body on two different wavelengths. You wake up in the morning and just to get out the house, well, before getting out the house, just to put on your clothes. If it doesn't feel right, you got to take your clothes off, put them on, take them off, socks, shoes, open the door, close it, get up out the seat, sit back down. Everything has to feel, because it's like there's a message going in your head that if you don't do this right, I'm gonna make your life, your day miserable, or something bad's gonna happen to you. And you fighting those thoughts every like, okay, I gotta get, and it's gotta feel perfect. So it may take you like almost an hour to get out the house. Walking up the basketball, dribbling up the court, maybe 3-4 blocks. You're dribbling and it come off your hand right. If your steps are wrong, if you mess up about 3 times, you have to, if you're going in forward, you have to walk back about 10 steps. And you have to do that until it feels right. Whatever you do on the right side, it was frustrating. And there are moments you wake up, you're like, man, I don't, because you knew what you'd have to go through. So just to get out the house, but then it may take me 45 minutes just to walk up to the court. Now I'm at the court, I'm practicing. And it's like your mind and your body's telling you, you can't go through the motions. You have to train hard. So I'm training an hour and a half. After I train, Chris Jackson ready to go home, but Tourette syndrome says, no, you got to play me now. And so it's like, you have to do this. And it would tell me you have to make 10 shots. All these 10 shots have to be, you're tired, you're huffing and puffing already. All of them have to be full speed. There could be no glitches in the move, and they can't touch rim. That may take me another hour and a half just to make 10 all net shots. And I'm huffing, but I can't stop, because if I stop, I'm cheating. And so I used to have so many near-death experiences because it wouldn't let me stop. And so that was like, man, and literally thought, I thought I was gonna die on more than one occasion because I couldn't catch my breath. I was pushing myself. And I said, man, I wouldn't be surprised if, Allah forbid, if I die training. And now I would cry in the morning. I'm like, man, I don't feel like going today. Not because I didn't love it, it's because I knew what Tourette's was gonna send me through. It was gonna make me, and this is what I tell people. They'll ask me, they say, well, if you had the choice not to have it, would you? I said, it's enticing. I said, but Allah gave it to me for a reason. And I said, Tourette's has pushed me where I myself would not have gone without it. Little Chris Jackson would have stopped an hour and a half, but Tourette's made me go another hour and a half and made me push beyond what I would have pushed myself, because I wouldn't have felt right if I would have stopped. And so I see the benefits, but that type of thing, man, and still today at 51, when I go train, I'm like, I can't just go through the motions. You know, I still train hard. And when I'm reading something, if it don't feel right, man, I'm like, it may take me 10 minutes sometimes to finish a page because I got to go over words again. It's like, it didn't roll off my lips the way I want. It didn't roll off my mind. And then even if it rolled off my lips and my mind, like when I'm reading it, if I don't comprehend it. So all of those 3 things have to be in place before I can go to the next page. So it takes me longer even to read a book, you know, and I'm like, but when I finally read it, I remember it.
You know it.
But it takes so long, you know, it's like, wow, man. So those are the things for me. That was, and still today, that I think that's the hardest challenge, just going through that. But I'm grateful. You know, if I didn't have, I don't know if I'd be the person that I am today, nor do I think I'd be the basketball player that I became if it wasn't for Allah blessing me with Tourette syndrome.
It's crazy because it's something that is a hardship, and some people would have thrown their hands up and said, well, I can't do this with this problem. I might not be able to get out of my house for an hour tomorrow morning if somebody commits to a 5 a.m. wake up, for example. But you used it to your advantage, and you allowed it to cause you, in some ways, basically, it's a perfectionist situation. Is that what it is? Like if you don't do good, you can't. There's a intense negative feeling.
Yes,
that's exactly the inspiration. I wasn't really that's. I got a lot more out of that just now than I expected. I thank you very much, because that's a tough problem. But alhamdulillah, you're an amazing example of turning something negative into as positive as it can possibly be. How is it for you now, inshallah? Is it better?
Well, yes and no. I've learned how
to live with it.
And to camouflage it, but I still have my days. I mean, waking up in the morning, I gotta sit in the bed. It's like I gotta give myself a pep talk. All right, new day. Inshallah, you're gonna get out of this bed. You're not gonna hesitate. And I'll tell myself things like this. I'm gonna give you like a conversation I had. Okay, inshallah, I won't. My intention is not to hesitate unnecessarily from now until I get out of this room. To use this as a stepping stone to develop sincerity and consistency that will last throughout the rest of my days on this earth, with the objective of seeking to commit to you, Allah, and only you, Allah, through all that I do. If my going to Jannah, if my not contracting life-threatening cancers, diseases, ailments, and having the best in this life and the best in heaven was contingent upon me not hesitating, would I be able to do it? Inshallah, I'm gonna start now. If I'm serious about committing to you, I won't hesitate. I gotta give myself a pep talk. Then I gotta get up and I gotta breathe and I gotta try not to hesitate. If I do, it's like I feel disappointed. I feel like I've lied to Allah. So I'm always trying to challenge myself to get through it, you know, to be. And so it's
that self-talk. That self-talk is amazing and elaborate.
Yeah.
We can all benefit from this.
Yeah.
You should probably put some of those prayers in writing and send them to the group, man.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, brother. Thank you so much.
I'm happy for you, because just the things that you're saying, man, is just that it, you know, a lot of people may have issues with it, but the way it makes you feel by being consistent and sacrificing, man, that's priceless. You know, so just continue to do it, man. And those people that aren't comfortable with it now, as the years progress and they see the results, they're going to wish that they did it.
I agree. Thank you, brother. Inshallah. Thank you. Inshallah.
Thank you, Brother Robert. Excellent.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to end on the note, you know, Brother Mahmud was speaking about prayer and how not only did you pray, but you got up, because prayer actually starts with it ends, with those thoughts in mind, that emotion in mind. Many of us pray, you know, I want wealth or I want overcome adversity, but as soon as we get up from the prayer mat, we go back to our limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
One thing that Tourette's has done for you is it's allowed you to keep that emotion going. And that's the reason why you're able to manifest the things that you're able to. So that's one lesson I want everybody to take. Write things down. Don't move. Self-talk to yourself every day, just like Mahmud was. And then making sure that you are that person that you talked about throughout your rest of your day. The other thing he said, readers are leaders. Read. Somebody already did what you wanted, wrote it in a book, follow their examples. And watch this carefully. What Brother Mahmud went through, apply the same principles and the same types of success, and whatever that you deem success is, will go there. Why was he able not to feel negative when his house burnt down? Because happiness is what he had. Because happiness is when you live life on your own terms, not on somebody else's. And that's what that's the cause of why we brought Brother Mahmud to this, for everybody to live life on their terms, by not waiting for some outside thing to happen for you to feel happy. It's all within. And hopefully that was a lesson that was taught today, and that we could reach out to the people that watch this, inshallah.
Like attracts like. You have to understand, you are a magnet. Whatever you are, that's what you draw to you. If you're negative, you're going to draw negativity. You're positive, you draw positive. You're a kind person, more people are kind to you. So you're like a magnet, you know, and you got to understand something about like attracts like. If you see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. Ask, believe, receive. So many people overlook this very simple quality. You don't have to figure it out. That's what freezes people. When you're trying to figure out your life all the way to the end, when you can't figure it out, it freezes you from trying it. You don't have to know how. You have to ask, believe, and receive. That's as simple as it gets, folks. Faith says, believe and I'll show you. If you show gratitude, it gets you to where you want to be quicker. It attracts joy, releases negativity.
You know, it's like as a child, I used to dream about having money, right? To be able to take care of my family. And I would wake up sometimes and my hands would be so, I would be dreaming, and you know how your dream seems so real, like you got money in your hand. And I would wake up and I'd slowly open my, it would be empty, but it would feel like I had nothing but money.